Hello, and welcome to today's Commander deck tech for the Reaper King. I'm Kevin with TopDeck Tutors, and today I'm going to be taking you through how to build this entire deck, plus some changes you can make for yourself to make the deck your own. As with most Commander decks, there's a lot of room for customization, but why would you play this deck? You play the Reaper King if you want a deck that runs all 5 gorgeous colors in Magic, plays all kinds of weird stuff, has lots of room to make your impression on the deck and make the deck your own, and does not need spot removal. More importantly, the deck is cheap and unique. You won't find a deck like this anywhere else. So let's break down what the Reaper King is, shall we? He is one of each color, or you can pay 2 colorless instead of either of those colors. He is all 5 colors and a legendary artifact creature Scarecrow. He is a 6/6 that gives other Scarecrow creatures you control +1/+1, and whenever another Scarecrow comes into play under your control, Vindicate. That is to say, destroy target permanent. But you're a savvy Magic player and you know that there aren't any good Scarecrows in the game. At least, not that many of them. So, what are we? Some kind of weird 5-color control deck? No, we're everything tribal. That's right, everything tribal. Before we go any further, let's take a look at the land base. We are running Gilt-Leaf Palace, which, as it comes into play, you may reveal an elf card from your hand. If you don't, it comes in tapped, and it taps for a black or a green. This is part of a cycle. This also includes Ancient Amphitheater, which forces you to reveal a giant, and it taps for red or white. Auntie's Hovel, which forces you to reveal a goblin, taps for red or black. Wanderwine Hub forces you to reveal a merfolk, and taps for white or blue. And Secluded Glen, which asks you to reveal a fairy, and taps for blue or black. Where are we going to get all these different creatures? We're just going to have them. Don't you worry about that yet. Let's talk a little bit more about the lands before we go any further, shall we? We are running Unclaimed Territory, Ally Encampment, Path of Ancestry, Haven of the Spirit Dragon, Cascading Cataracts, Primal Beyond, and Swarmyard. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to break down why we're running these weird and specifically tribal lands, except for Cascading Cataracts. You can't make an argument for not running Cascading Cataracts in a 5-color commander deck. Are we running Arcane Adaptation so we get all these creature types? No, we're not. Wouldn't even dream of it. We're running Changelings. For those of you who aren't in the know, Changeling is a keyword ability that means that the creature with it is every creature type at all times. That's right, Chameleon, Colossus, Amoeboid, Changeling, and Cairn Wanderer are assembly workers and constructs. They are gods, and they are hounds. You get the picture. Now, this ability matters in all zones, so you can reveal any of these cards to make those lands come in untapped, giving us access to a lot of different colors really early on in the game, which really helps considering we're a 5-color deck and we can use all the help we can get with our mana base. So let's break down our Changelings. Chameleon Colossus is a 4-mana 4/4. with protection from black, that for 2 and green, he can double his power. Amoeboid Changeling is our toolbox, a little bit of a hidden gem in this deck, that can tap to give a creature every creature type, or take them all away, which, as you'll see later on in the deck, will matter quite a bit. Cairn Wanderer is basically Soul Flare without Delve, but he's a Changeling, and we're going to run a lot of subpar Changelings, because remember, every time a Scarecrow enters the battlefield, we destroy target permanent. So let's look at some more Changelings. We're running Taurian Mauler, Mirror Entity, and Shapesharer. Taurian Mauler is an absolute beatstick and will continue to get bigger as the game goes on. Until he's answered, he'll remain a major threat on the board. Mirror Entity is something that may be overlooked a bit, because he doesn't seem to do much until you activate his ability and make your entire team massive. And next up is Shapesharer, something that will also go unnoticed for quite a while in your game, because he just sits there until you make him a copy of your opponent's commander and hit him with it. Next, we're going to touch on some subpar Changelings. Ghostly Changeling, Avian Changeling, Game Trail Changeling, and Firebelly Changeling. Fairly subpar creatures, 2/2s for 2, 2/2s with flying for 3, a 1/1 with fire breathing, and Game Trail Changeling, which is a 4/4 with trample. The important thing to remember here is that these creatures have all creature types, and will trigger every enter the battlefield effect that we have when they come in. We have more: Skeletal Changeling, Woodland Changeling, Warspike Changeling, Turtle Shell Changeling. Yeah, we're running them all. Every card with the word Changeling on it, We just have to run it, because there really aren't that many good scarecrows. Trust me, look them up. Skeletal Changeling regenerates, Woodland Changeling is a 2/2, Warspike Changeling is basically irrelevant, and Turtleshell Changeling is the same. If they ever print more Changelings, these are the first things to go. Next up we have Changeling Sentinel, Moonglove Changeling, Moth-Dust Changeling, and Mistform Ultimatus. While Mistform Ultimatus doesn't actually have the Changeling ability, he does have an ability that is functionally the same, so we're going to throw him in here anyway. Like I said, most of these cards are in here because they are entered with battlefield triggers for our various lords, which we're going to get into. Before we move on, we should cover something strange. Changeling Berserker has champion a creature, which means when he comes into play, you sacrifice him unless you exile another creature you control, and then return it to play once Changeling Berserker leaves play. Now, while this might seem bad, a 5/3 for 4 with haste surely isn't worth getting rid of your creatures, no? The same can be said for Changeling Hero. Not really that great to get a 4/4 for 5 with lifelink to get rid of one of your creatures. The same can be said for Changeling Titan. While a bit big, he's not really worth it, is he? Let's talk about Conjurer's Closet. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control and return that card to the battlefield under your control. Say we have Reaper King and Conjurer's Closet and one Changeling on the field, and we play Changeling Berserker. We champion the Woodland Changeling, exiling it under Changeling Berserker. Next, Reaper King's ability triggers and we get to destroy something. We move to our end step and exile Changeling Berserker with Conjurer's Closet, meaning we can blow up something else, and then Changeling Berserker comes back, triggers Reaper King again, and exiles Woodland Changeling. This means, of course, that if ever Changeling Berserker would leave the battlefield again, we get to trigger Reaper King one more time. Every time we get to trigger Reaper King, we are destroying our opponent's commanders, our opponent's vital lands, our opponent's win conditions, and more importantly, our opponent's creatures. Because we're going to win this game through grind. We're going to destroy everything they have and then hit them upside the head with really, really bad value creatures. So let's talk about our sweepers. Harsh Mercy. For 2 and a white, each player chooses a creature type and you destroy all creatures that aren't of a type chosen this way. A little bit cheaper than Wrath of God, plus Wrath of God has double white and we want to avoid those 2 pips whenever we can. This also has an interesting interaction with Amoeboid Changeling. Let's say our opponent chooses Angels. We can target their commander, who's presumably an angel, and decide that they aren't an angel anymore, meaning they're destroyed along with the rest with Harsh Mercy. Let's talk about everyone's favorite blue board wipe. It returns all creatures you don't control to their owner's hand. No, I'm not talking about Cyclonic Rift, I'm talking about Whelming Wave. For 2 and blue, it returns all creatures except Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents to their owner's hands. I think you'll find that most of your board presence is going to be Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, or Serpents. Now, Coat of Arms for 5 gives each creature +1/+1 for each creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. That means that each of your changelings will get +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield. Door of Destinies is similar, but a little less efficient. It has you choose a creature type when it comes in, and whenever you cast one of those creatures, all of your creatures of that type get a bit bigger. Now, while we don't have that many actual scarecrows, we have 3 in the deck. We do have a few honorary scarecrows. Progenitor Mimic comes in as a copy of something and then creates a new copy of it every turn. Metallic Mimic helps our guys to be just that little bit bigger, and Clever Impersonator can become anything on the board, which is very, very useful. He can become an extra Conjurer's Closet if you want him to. But we do run actual scarecrows in the deck. Wildfield Scarecrow isn't great, but he can get us 2 basic lands, and he's an enter the battlefield trigger for Reaper King, so he's good in both early and late game. We also run 3 extra Changeling cards. These aren't creatures, they are tribal instants. Crib Swap is our one piece of targeted removal that exiles a creature and makes a shapeshifter. It can be very important just to get rid of something else and also get an extra trigger off of Reaper King at the same time. This is 2 for the price of 1, very, very worth running. Now, about those creatures that aren't changelings, we are running Seshiro the Anointed, Unesh Cryosphinx Sovereign, Hungry Lynx, and Scion of Una. Seshiro gives other snakes you control +2/+2, and whenever a snake deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Now, Unesh makes your Sphinxes cost 2 less to cast. And whenever Unesh or another Sphinx enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library, an opponent separates those cards into 2 piles, put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. That's right, folks, Factor Fiction on a stick. Many of our changelings cost 2, 3, maybe 4 mana. So often we'll be paying 1 mana to Factor Fiction and put a creature on the board and vindicate something. This deck can kind of go off like that. Whatever we do with Unesh, we just pick the pile with the most changelings and keep going. Strap in, folks, there's a lot of words here. Cats you control have protection from rats. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent creates a 1/1 black rat creature token with Death Touch. Whenever a rat dies, put a 1/1 counter on each cat you control. Now remember, all of our cats are also rats. So whenever one of our creatures die, all of our other creatures get bigger. And our creatures have protection from all rats. Hungry Lynx is a good political move, as well as a decent creature that acts as something of a pseudo-lord. We're gonna have to protect our creatures, aren't we? So we use Scion of Una. For 2 and a white, she's a 1/1 fairy soldier with flash that gives other fairy creatures you control +1/+1 and Shroud, which means they can't be the target of spells or abilities, which means no one else can touch them. Now, particularly with Hungry Lynx, this is another case where Amoeboid Changeling is very, very useful. Keep an eye on this card. He's a real toolbox. But you might have a problem that some of your creatures aren't quite big enough yet. Maybe all of these different lord effects just aren't doing it for you. Maybe your coat of arms just isn't getting them big enough. Well, to that, I introduce you to the cheapest, most efficient lord effect you will find. Crucible of Fire. Dragon creatures you control get +3/+3. This card is absolutely bonkers, and your opponents will want to blow up the board. So what do we do against that? Well, we have protection against that. Full Moon's Rise, Midnight Entourage, and Soulcatcher's Eerie are all cards that help us come back from a board wipe, or stop one. Let's look at Full Moon's Rise first. Werewolf creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample, but we can sacrifice Full Moon's Rise to regenerate all werewolves we control. Midnight Entourage helps us draw cards whenever an Aetherborn dies and gives them +1/+1. Soulcatcher's Eerie gets a counter whenever a bird dies, and all birds get +1/+1 for each fairy counter on it. Though if your local meta is plagued by bird tribal, I would avoid this one. But we need other bombs to close out the game. Let's talk for a moment about peer pressure. For 3 and a blue, you choose a creature type, and if you control more creatures of that type than any other player, you gain control of all creatures of that type. Take their commander, take all of their weenies, take whatever you want, because you will have more of that creature than them unless you're talking about elves. Let's talk about Kindred Charge. Choose a creature type. For each creature you control of the chosen type, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the next end step. We don't care very much about the haste most of the time, we just want the enter the battlefield triggers. Let's say you have Reaper King and 4 other changelings, you will blow up most of everyone else's board. Kindred Summons is very similar, choose a creature type. Most time we're going to choose Scarecrow. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X cards of the chosen type, where X is the number of creatures you control of that type, and put them onto the battlefield. This is a way to develop our board and also get some nice Unesh and Reaper King triggers off. You could also run Eerie Interlude if you want all of your creatures to jump and land back down again. This means that we're going to get all of those enter the battlefield triggers all over again. Amazing value. But since we're a commander deck, we're running Sol Ring and Command Tower, and since we're in 5 colors, we're running Cultivate and Kodama's Reach to help us fix our colors, and we're running Farseek and Exotic Orchard to help us get there. Farseek can search out most lands, Exotic Orchard will tap for most any color most of the time, and if you have the money or have them in your collection, you can also run your choice of Shocklands or fetches. But what changes will you make? The deck is highly customizable, so what are you going to take out or put in? Maybe you want to put in Gishaf, Sun's Avatar, Utfara Hellkite, Lord of the Undead, or Kindred Dominance. All of these cards good in their own right, and maybe you'll decide to put them in. You may also want to run Call to the Kindred, which enchants a creature and then allows you to rip the top 5 cards of your library, and you may put a creature card that shares a type with that creature onto the battlefield. And this can be very helpful with Unesh, like most things. But this is a commander deck, something that you're going to take with you and change as time goes on. As new sets come out, this deck gets a new piece. Every set that comes out has at least one small bit of tribal support or strange creature type support. We have Lathlis from M19, Sylvia Brightspear from Battlebond. We're always going to get something. So feel free to customize to your heart's content. And that's it for today's Reaper King deck tech. If you'd like to see more, you can subscribe here for TopDeck Tutors, and you can keep up to date with our decks as they come out. We're making EDH decks, standard decks, decks you can build in Arena, and little guides on how to make them. So that's it for me today. Good luck and have fun.